Hello, everybody.
Hi!
Welcome to Art Discourse. On this week's episode, Chrissy and I are going to answer whatever question I read right now. We are not experts. We are just two artists talking about stuff
that have been working for long enough that we feel like we can respond to questions that get sent in.
This question's a repeat.
Oh, whoops, that shouldn't be in there.
And on this week's episode, how does one find their audience?
Oh. How does one find their audience? Okay.
I don't think that there's like an easy way. It's not like you can just like call 411 and be like, hey, where's my audience? I think it takes a bit of time.
I think so too.
You have to put yourself out into places and kind of test the waters and see if that is your marketplace.
Hello, it's me again. I'm calling from a faraway land. Pick up the phone. I'm calling from a different time zone. Heard you are a pretty good source for major topics in art discourse. Hello, I'll leave my questions as a message at the dial tone.
Something that I did a lot when we first started Sparkbox, and thinking about residencies, which like we hadn't really done many because we were in school, is I started to look at other residencies that I thought were awesome. And then looking at who went to those residencies and then searching those people and seeing, what kind of work did they do, what seemed to be their interests. Yeah, just kind of like doing a bit of a like trickle down system. So, if you're making quilts and they're like modern quilts, maybe look up somebody else that's doing that. And if they have Instagram or social media, then you can see who's following them and then see like what are those people like. Then
it's a crafty way to go about that.
You're gonna have multiple different types of audiences. Sometimes you're just gonna have to, like you said, put yourself out there and see who.
And see what sticks.
Yeah, see who's interested. I think some artists are really good at sort of like fabricating a mystique or like a persona, like a different persona. Yeah. And so they find an audience that is maybe really different than like who they actually are and who they hang out with. I know that's not really the question, but there is something about that I find very interesting.
We could expand the question to be not just how do you find your audience, but how do you build or grow your audience?
Yeah, or like how do you develop yourself? Like, because I think your audience is also going to depend a lot on like how you carry yourself, how you talk about things. If you think about Andy Warhol, like he created an audience in such an interesting way. Like he was kind of a socialite, but he was also very quiet and shy. Sometimes having other people do interviews on his behalf, I'm pretty sure. Maybe that is folklore. But, like how do you, crafting something like that where I'm like, do any of us really know what he was actually like?
So you're saying like, building the myth a bit.
Yeah.
Yes, I think that's a cool idea as well. Like there is always that kind of myth and persona associated with like an artist and that figure. And I think that's also what kind of sells you.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think like when you think of an audience, you're also thinking about like how are people connecting to you, and what are they connecting with, and why are they making that connection, and how do you grow in that space, or is it stifling? Because I think sometimes artists can start out in one place and then they want to shift to somewhere new, and that, you see it with musicians all the time. If they sort of are, especially young musicians, they start in this one sort of mythos of creation, and then they grow up and they need to transition out of that, and this fear of losing the followers, the audience, the community that they built can be crushing sometimes. And I've never experienced the amount of wealth and people that you're supporting and like what the fear of what the repercussions of losing that large fan base would actually look like on paper. But I just feel like, what we've noticed the most is consistency.
Oh, yeah.
If you want people to be committed to you, you have to be committed to them.
Yes. Now, mind you, like sometimes we're not the best at consistency.
We are not the best.
We're trying to get better. When we do look at our stats and we look at our things, when we are consistent, we have better. Everything's just better. It's hard, but you have to like keep trying to be consistent.
Mm-hmm.
And I think like that's like being consistent and also just being genuinely like yourself.
Yeah. I think like when you're consistent, it shows that you love what you're doing, and people get excited about watching that passion.
Yeah. Authentic.
Yeah. But I think like consistency doesn't have to be like posting to Instagram every day. You know, when I was working in the fine dining, there are restaurants that have like, you know, maybe 2 major seatings a year. But they've created like such an enormous excitement about themselves that they sell out in the blink of an eye for those 2 seatings a year. And
yes,
you know, so like an audience can come in so many different ways. It doesn't have to be like the number of hearts you get or followers you have.
Well, we have like probably quite a few audiences. Maybe we should talk about like our Instagram audience versus our Facebook audience, and perhaps a bit of like their functions.
Yeah.
Right, like because when it comes to local and it comes to the space near us geographically, Facebook seems to be like one of the better like places for that audience. Like when we post events through there, people are that's kind of who's on our Facebook page. Not necessarily like if we posted it to Instagram, maybe we'd probably do okay. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a good insight though.
Because like I think audiences can be quite different than one another. Right? So like what's on Instagram is going to be different than Facebook, which will be very different than LinkedIn. Very, very different. What's interesting about the internet is that the audiences can be very global. They might not actually be here and located like geographically close to you. They could be quite far away. It could be quite sporadic throughout the world. And I think that being able to leverage that right now is a really, where it puts us in a very good position as being artists.
I think that you make a good point too about like what kind of audience are you looking for? Like Critical Mass, their core audience is in Port Hope. They're a small arts organization that is devoted to community building.
Yeah.
And so they find their audience by participating in that community. Like the people that run that organization, they show up. They show up for their community, not just when it's for themselves. And they talk to people, they network, they meet with community builders outside of their sector. They, you know, like, I think you have to know sort of where you want to participate.
Look to your community? I guess that's kind of like, yes, that makes sense.
Yeah, you know, like, we love connecting with printmakers, and printmaking is global. And, you know, depending on what that connection is that we're looking for, it might be going to a conference, it might be doing an Instagram Live with a printmaker, but it also might be going to one of the many printmaking Facebook groups, which is sort of the only time I'm really ever on Facebook. You know, so it depends on the kind of community that you're looking for. And that community ultimately can be your audience.
I think that they end up growing together, don't they?
Yeah, I think so.
Well, where do you guys find your audiences? Or how do you build an audience? I guess it's just how do you build a community? Because all those words are pretty much the same thing.
As always, let us know what you think. We really do read the comments and respond to them, so feel free to let us know in the comments below.
If you enjoyed this video, could you do 2 things for me? Could you like it? And could you subscribe to our channel? Both of these things help us out tremendously. A big shout out to all of our patrons. Your continued support is amazing, and we really appreciate the encouragement to continue making these videos. If you want to become a patron, you can see the link below in the description.
Source for major talk.